Hi everyone. So I'm here for my weekly Instagram Live. I've been doing trauma related topics. Today I'm going to be talking about trauma and dream analysis. So this is really interesting. So far I've been really talking about the biology and clinical medicine of PTSD and trauma, but I'm going to kind of get into some Jungian archetypal dream analysis topics today. It gets kind of fun. And let me just start off. This topic for this video was inspired by a question I got in response to my last Instagram. Let me just read what the question is. So I have a question about dreams caused by trauma. Why is it that trauma-related dreams don't happen during the trauma phase, but after it? Dreams that start after you're away from the trauma-causing source. And why does a person start to think and get obsessed with the trauma thoughts after leaving the dream? And I'll explain first, I'm going to explain from a biological perspective why nightmares happen with trauma. But this question, why I really wanted to answer it, is because it's getting to something where our dreams are not just about the biochemistry of what's going on in our brains, but they are trying, and this is the Jungian, we're not talking from like a research space right now, but in terms of how psychoanalysis looks at it, dreams are calling our attention to things that we're not paying attention during our waking life. So that feeling of like you're just kind of head down going through your life, you're not paying attention to everything, but you're busy or you're traumatized, and then you start having these recurring dreams, or a theme keeps popping up in your dream. That's your subconscious self trying to say, hey, you're ignoring this, pay attention to it. And so this question of like, why does it happen after? It might be for this person that the dream is trying to say like, look, now you're ready to look at this trauma and process it. So first, I'm going to say one quick thing that if you stay tuned to the end, I've actually, as I have been doing these weekly Instagram lives for the last month or so, been working on a course that I'm going to be launching next Tuesday when I do my Instagram live about PTSD and the specific protocol that I do with patients that I've talked a little bit about here, this prolonged exposure protocol that's going to be going into a lot more detail and kind of teaching you how to do this for yourself. And the reason I've been working on this idea for a long time, because it is really hard to find a therapist who specializes in this. And I feel like of all the conditions I treat, it's the most misunderstood, and it makes me genuinely sad when I hear people say, oh, I just have this chronic issue with trauma, I'm going to have it forever. And I'm just really feel strongly about educating people and giving them these practical tools, because when you understand it, it's not rocket science, right? I think a lot of people can be empowered to do these strategies for themselves. So I'll talk more about the end about what the specific course is, and in case you're interested, you'll be able to sign up to be on the wait list. So first, let me talk about the biology of dreams. I'm only going to touch on this briefly because we're not that interested in it, right? The reason nightmares happen with trauma is because a person is part of the symptoms are they're in this fight or flight state all the time. And at night, when your body's supposed to be relaxing, it's not. That's why people have really bad insomnia. They have trouble falling asleep. They're waking up in panic. And nightmares are what happens from a brain perspective when you have stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, noradrenaline running through your body, running through your brain. And the brain is like trying to process this. What do we do with this? And then it comes up with the content of a scary dream. Okay, so that's kind of the biology of it. But let's talk a little bit about how we can analyze our dreams, how we can use them to inform us of what we should be paying attention to during the day that we're not, and what they tell us about the process of where we are in our trauma recovery. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal experience. I touched on this a little bit before, but when I was going through cancer treatment and after, up until I got my trauma addressed in therapy using prolonged exposure, I had recurring nightmares about drowning. And this had a lot of layers of meaning for me. One was that one of the traumatic things that happened to me during my treatment was I had this very rare, kind of random side effect from one of my nausea medications called dystonia. And it's idiosyncratic, meaning that it just happens out of nowhere. So I'd been taking the medication for a while, no problem, that all of a sudden it happened. And because of that, I didn't know what caused it. It took a little bit for it to get figured out. But this was essentially, I was eating a popsicle. I mean, I just remember like it was yesterday, eating a popsicle, and it was at night, it was like 9 o'clock, and I'm like having trouble eating the popsicle, like my mouth isn't working properly. I'm like, this is weird. And I throw away the popsicle, and then my jaw starts tremoring. I'm like, this is weird. What's happening? And then over the course of about a minute, it went from tremoring to just clamped shut. And when I say clamped shut, I don't mean like a little clamped shut. I meant like a wrench was grinding it shut to the extent that I thought I was going to crush my own teeth with the force in my mouth, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. I could not open my mouth. So I ran out to my parents and I can't. So my mom takes me to the ER. As it was clamping shut, I shoved a jacket into my mouth, like a fleece, so I wouldn't break my teeth. But the process getting to the ER, and like they had to do labs. There was a couple of things it could be, and I didn't tell them about the medication right away because I didn't even think of it as something being related, and it wasn't in my chart because I'd been prescribed it somewhere else. And so it was, so for these few hours until they figured out what it was, and as soon as they figured out, they give one medication, Benadryl, and it goes away immediately. But I thought I was gonna suffocate to death, because I thought I was gonna suffocate to death. I thought my teeth were gonna crush through my skull and I would break my jaw and be like swallowing little bits of tooth, and I mean it was really awful. Anyway, long story short, because of that, I started having these nightmares related to suffocation, and drowning was kind of a metaphor for that. Now, water, though, had a lot of significance for me because I used to love the water. I was a college water polo player, a surfer, and I had never gone back into the ocean after my diagnosis. It was like this mental block, and it kind of symbolized for me what I no longer could do, like what something very significant that was taken away from me when I had cancer. And so I would have these recurring nightmares of being pulled underwater in various ways, like a wave. I'd be trying to surf, a wave would come and drown me. I'd be pulled underwater in a pool, like a whale would come and pull me underwater, and I would always wake up like like struggling to breathe. Now, what happened as I was going through my trauma treatment is I had a dream with same theme. I was being chased by someone, and I had to hide, like jump into a pool and hide under the pool, and there were flashlights, and if I put my head above water, they were gonna catch me. And I was like, couldn't breathe. But then all of a sudden, I was like, wait, I am breathing. And in the dream, I was breathing underwater. And then I kind of woke up and I was breathing, because of course I wasn't, my body was still breathing. I was not underwater in real life. But like that symbolized so much to me, because first of all, it was not only could I handle this thing I couldn't handle before, but I had a special power that I didn't have before. Like I could breathe underwater. And it was like, Alana, you can face this thing now. This thing you have been running from for so long, you can handle. And not only can you handle it, you can handle it in a special way that you couldn't before. So that's all to say, like an example of how our dreams can kind of reflect where we are in the trauma process. So you may be thinking, God, I have this recurring dream. How do I analyze it? Well, let me tell you the steps, and I'll link to an article I wrote on this a while back. And I learned how to do this from a seminar I took in Jungian dream analysis way back in residency, and since I've done it with patients and worked on analyzing my own dreams. So step one is you want to write your dreams down, and you want to do it as soon after waking up as you can. The reason is that dreams are not linear, they're not logical, they're more images and symbols and associations. And once we wake up, our conscious mind is going to start trying to attribute meaning, or like not meaning, attribute logical coherence to it, and filling in gaps and details like, oh, this happened, then this, and then this, making it more like make sense. But you kind of want to catch the dream prior to your conscious brain adding to it. And the linear like linear this and then that order isn't so important as scenes and images and people and associations. Okay, so first you write it. Step one, you write it down. Two, you brainstorm and you write down what are all your associations with the things in the dream. So for example, I explained how with my dream, water had certain associations. It was both something that I loved, but something I felt like had been taken away from me. Also drowning, I didn't mention this, is for some weird reason, even though I do all these water sports, it's like one of my biggest fears. Like, I'm fine at the surface of the water. I would never scuba dive or like go on a submarine, for example. So kind of these mixed associations. And then also like, so whatever place the dream is it like your childhood home? Is it your school? Is it kind of a mix of a couple of places? Is it, do you like the place or not? Are there items in the dream that have special significance? So you're really thinking about the place, the people, the like things that you see. Are there any associations that in your waking life you're like, oh yeah, that links to this thing clearly, and I have this positive or negative association? Next, you want to think specifically about the people in the dream. Now, people in our dream, remember, so in your dreams, you are the writer, director, and you are all of the actors. So if there are other people in your dream, unless those people are people with whom you are extremely close, like very significant in your life, like a spouse or a child or a parent, it's more likely that the person in the dream symbolizes not that person in real life, but a part of your psyche, yourself, that you're in conflict with. And so you can think about the person, like let's say it's a certain friend, and you have a certain, maybe that friend's always very reassuring, and they're trying to reassure you in the dream. That part of you, that person could symbolize the part of you that's trying to reassure yourself. Or maybe it's someone who's highly critical of you, and so it's symbolizing the part of you that's critical of yourself. And so think less about, oh, this means something about my relationship with this person. It's more, who does that person represent as a part of my own mind? Number 4 is there's something called day residue, and this is like things that are actually not very significant, but that just you happen to see or whatever happened in your day that come out in the dream. So I remember having a dream that had a person that I went to college with, like, but kind of like an acquaintance, not someone that had like a particularly strong significance for me, but then I just happened to have seen them a few days before. That's day residue. Or like I've had people in my dream that from high school, I haven't seen them in years, but I just saw something on my Facebook feed pop up and then they're in my dream. So, or like, oh, power mode. I'm like, why do I keep forgetting to charge my phone before I do these? Don't worry, guys. I've got enough phone battery. So like the point of day residue, and it could be a person, but it also could be like a place, like, oh, this place has no significance, but I just happened to be there, the Vaughan shopping market. It kind of helps you remove things that don't necessarily have a ton of significance, but that you just happen to be exposed, so they're in the dream. That's called day residue. Now, next, you want to examine what was the emotional tone of your dream. I mean, I'll just ask patients, well, how did you feel in the dream? I don't take it for granted. Like, oh, I felt terrified. Or, I felt like kind of calm, like people were attacking me, but I felt like I could handle it. I felt like I'm on top of this. I gotta do this. So did you feel positive or negative or neutral? Like, does that feeling kind of make sense given what was happening in the dream? Did you feel capable and competent? Did you feel terrified and afraid and out of control? Were you being chased? So that is important information of not how you feel in your day life thinking about the dream, but how did you feel in the dream? So for example, the difference I had between like all these dreams of being drowned and like I'm terrified and out of control versus this one of like, no, I chose to go into the pool and I could breathe underwater and I was saving myself. I was protecting myself. I felt empowered, all right? Now, number 6, and this is where we get into kind of Jungian collective unconscious. By Jungian, I'm talking about Carl Jung. He's one of the founders of psychoanalysis. People think of Freud. He was kind of like the OG, but then Jung came along, less of the weird psychosexual stuff that Freud has, more, I don't know, palatable, I think. He talks about something called the collective unconscious, which is like all of us, even though we have different life experiences and different cultures, there are certain symbols that have common significance for us. So for example, death. Death in dreams doesn't usually mean death. It usually means transformation. Being chased in a dream often means not literally being chased, but us running from a part of ourselves that we're not yet ready to face. And if you Google Jungian dream dictionary or dream collective unconscious dream symbol, something like that, you can see like a dictionary of what certain symbols are thought to mean. And you don't have to take this as literal. More think of it as generating ideas of, oh, that makes sense. I didn't think of that way. And the idea is that symbols in dreams are often not literal. They symbolize. I guess that's what a symbol is, right? And actually what was the other common symbol? I wanted to make sure I'm referencing the article I wrote. Disease. Disease often symbolizes inner conflict, so like us fighting a part of ourselves, distrusting a part of ourselves, or disliking, like we don't like the diseased part of ourselves. So that's another symbol. Now, the last step, so okay, you've gone through this sequential process and you're like, okay, well, what does a dream mean? So rather than thinking there is one meaning to a dream, think of the dream as helping you ask the right questions that then in your day life you try to answer. In the process of answering them is a healing process for you. So think of, if you're thinking of the dream as trying to tell you something, like your subconscious mind trying to say, hey, you're not paying attention to it, pay attention to it. What could it be trying to tell you? So for me, like when I could breathe underwater, it felt like it was telling me, hey, not only are you coming through this, but you are wiser. It helped kind of boost my self-esteem because I was dealing with really low self-esteem at this time. Like I'm just a total loser who can't deal with anything and superficially probably seemed like I had it together, but internally was like had cripplingly low self-esteem. And it's like, oh no, wait, you can breathe, you can metaphorically breathe underwater. And so like, what is this telling you about internal conflicts that you need to address or face, or conversations you need to have, or life changes you need to make? So it's not that there's any one answer. It's that what questions are being raised, and then how do I, in my day-to-day life, go about answering them? That's essentially the process I wanted to talk about in terms of dreams and trauma. And so let me, in these last couple of minutes, talk a little bit about that online course that I mentioned. So let me pull back. I have a little list of questions that I want to answer about it. So what is it? It's a video course that goes me kind of talking like this, going over from beginning to end the biology of PTSD, why it happens, how it happens, what leads to it, the role of avoidance, giving all that background, and then what do you do? how and why does prolonged exposure or exposure therapy work? How do you create a protocol for yourself based on what your trauma was, and how do you execute that protocol? With all of the handouts and worksheets that I use with patients, with a journal that kind of takes you through the process, with all the prep work you need to do, how do you track how you're doing over time, and if you need help going through it with a professional, how do you find a trained professional who is knowledgeable about this, who can be your advocate, can be your support, and keep you kind of on track, rather than, like I said, a lot of therapists don't know this specific treatment through no fault of their own because it's very specialized. So how do you find someone who's experienced? Okay, so I'm really proud of it. The reason I created it is, like I said, I get so many emails of like, oh, do you have referrals? And I'll send them the website of like the therapists who do it. It's it's like 20 people, and that's not all the people in the country who do it, but just on some of these like referral networks, and it's like can be really time consuming and expensive, and so I just wanted to make something that was much more manageable from a cost perspective, from a time perspective, and give you all the information in a really, I don't know, like a one-stop shop, like concrete place where you get it and you kind of know how to take it from here. Because I think a lot of people watching this are like, I just need to understand like what I should be doing. And with a lot of problems in life, lack of information is not the problem, but I think actually with PTSD, lack of information is a huge problem. And if people are just given the right guidance, they know what they need to do, or once they know what they need to do, they can do it and they can do the hard work. So who is this course for? Well, if you've been watching my Instagrams and you're like, this person's an idiot, it's not for you. If like what I'm saying doesn't resonate with you, then it's probably not for you, because you kind of like get a sense of who I am and what my treatment approach is. But if what I'm saying is like, wow, I didn't know that explains a lot, I think this approach could help me, and kind of like the way I explain things, or my vibe, or my the approach, then you're gonna like this, because it's that in a lot more concrete deal. And I'm a very concrete, what word did I just use? Concrete format. I'm a very, like, my mindset is very systems oriented, but systems around people. It's like, I kind of see how things fit together, but I'm not trying to like create Ford Motor Company or something. I want to help people take the steps they need to be happy. So that's what I try to offer in this. Okay, oh yeah, all right, I get it. All right. If you're interested, after this Instagram live, the Kate, who helps me with my business social media stuff, is going to be posting I think it's a chat box where you can put in your email address if you want to be on the the announcement wait list. Also, I'm going to be doing another Instagram live next week. I'll talk more about it. It's going to go live next Tuesday when I do my Instagram live, and so that's when you'll be able to get it. And I'm going to be on a limited basis. I think I'm going to cap it at like 10 people. There'll be an option if you want some personalized, the course is just going to be self-study, but for some people who want to sign up for the extra, I will help you create a personalized protocol. I won't be working with you one-on-one as your doctor, because that involves like I'd have to be in the same state as you and like licensing issues. But it will be like you kind of on a written questionnaire describe what you're dealing with in trauma, and I help you create like, okay, based on this, here's what I recommend is your exposure homework exercises. You do this for this long on these days. Here's what I think your imaginal exposure exercises could be in the order you should do them. So I can help you kind of create that protocol. Again, I have to, just because of my time limitations, probably cap that at like the first 10 people who want to do that upgrade. But so anyway, that's the end of my video. I hope you found this interesting when I'm talking about the trauma and dream analysis. And if you're interested in the course, look on my Instagram. After this video is posted, you'll see the chat box. You also leave a comment, or go to my website and, email me in the contact form. I'll try to make it as easy as possible for people to reach out. And come next week, I'll talk more about the course and probably also talk more about some trauma-related topic based on questions I get. So I hope everyone has a great rest of their day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.